Good morning. Amy Jacobson here. Sean from Elmwood Park in for Dan Proft. Another day of torture.
Very excited.
For us.
They refuse to let me have coffee during the break. They're guarding the door. I don't know why. I want to have a little good time here.
Well, you're here on a good week. A lot of going on in the world, apparently, with North Korea. We're kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to see what the next move will be. President Trump, at the White House lawn for that Easter egg roll yesterday, answered one question about, what his next move will be.
I don't want to telegraph what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. I'm not like other administrations where they say we're going to do this in 4 weeks, and that doesn't work that way.
But North Korea is talking tough, talking nuclear.
Some nuclear war may break out at any moment.
I'm sorry, what did he say?
Some nuclear war may break out at any moment.
So how would a war with North Korea work out?
Mr. President, I'm not saying we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but I do say no more than 10 to 20 million killed, tops, depending on the breaks.
Oh, movie clips. Having fun with new movie clips.
Well,
not
that's
a
from
good
my
thing
yesterday
sometimes.
saying it's a lot like Dr. Strangelove. But go ahead. Let's get to the expert who would know, because I have to ask just one question.
All right, here is Lieutenant Colonel Cedric Leighton. He joins us on our Turnkey.pro answer line, returning guest to the show. Lieutenant Colonel, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Amy. Good morning. How are you doing?
We're fine. So Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence is in a bit of a stare down. He issued a warning for Kim Jong-un yesterday saying, don't mess with President Trump. What do you think the next move is going to be? Is the ball in his court or is the ball in our court?
Well, that's kind of an odd game of tennis in this case. We're dealing with a multiple way of looking at this kind of situation, because the North Koreans are probably the ones who have the next ball that they have to serve, and that is basically what are they going to do in terms of a nuclear test or a missile test. Either one of those is probably the next move. The U.S. and South Korea this morning are engaged in an Air Force exercise, a joint Air Force exercise between the two forces. So there is stuff going on, but I think for the really high-level stuff, it's really up to North Korea at this point to make the next move.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel, I have a question for you. I mean, it's 2017. We've got electric cars. I'm talking into my phone, sending text messages. We don't have to send troops the way we used to, right? So if things get go sideways, we've got the drones. We've got everything. No one really has to get dirty in an American uniform. That's what I'm concerned with, because I think we've wasted enough people.
Well, Sean, it's there are a lot of differences in the way we used to fight wars. When you look at the old Korean War, the one from the hot part between 1950 and 53, there was a very people-intensive war, just like Vietnam was. And as you move forward in history to the present day, there were far fewer casualties, a lot less people-on-people contact in the newer, more modern wars. So the answer is partly yes. This one is going to be difficult, though, because North Korea has a very hardened series of bunkers that they have. They have a very difficult, redundant systems of air defense, of artillery, all those kinds of things that can actually make a difference when it comes to fighting a war. So, yes, we would definitely automate the process a lot more than it has been before. Drones would be used, standoff weapons would be used. Those kinds of things would certainly make the casualties a lot less on all sides, actually, than they once were. But having said that, there is still is danger to our troops, and the fact that many of them could still come in contact with North Korean forces should there be a hot war really indicates that it's still a very, very dangerous thing.
But what about an attack here in the lower 48? I mean, over the weekend they rolled out this new intercontinental ballistic missile that was part of their parade. I don't know if it's operational or not, but that's pretty, disheartening, putting your head on a pillow at night thinking that they could launch something that would hit the homeland.
Absolutely, Amy. Now, one quick thing about that is that may have just been a canister that was out there for show. So given that kind of a situation, they may be showing off what they can do or what they think they can do. But the basic issue here is this. If they do decide to actually put this out, then there are going to be some serious consequences if they do actually send an ICBM our way. Right now, they don't have the capability, as far as we know, they don't have the capability to do that, but they're clearly working on it, and that's what's really dangerous about the North Koreans.
You know, Lieutenant Colonel, I'm a free market guy. I like capitalism. I love the American story. I love property rights. I love all that stuff. And I've always been mesmerized by the fact that North Korea is an absolute and total failure, living in darkness, in cold. It's given everything from China. We've now made friends with China, right? We looked in his eyes. He's got a beautiful soul. Can't we just economically freeze him out so we turn it into what's happening in Venezuela right now, where Maduro can't even walk outside and the people go crazy? I like these revolutions from the inside rather than the outside. I think we're giving them a paper tiger, in essence, to rally their own support by saying America's going to attack us, because, you know, their propaganda in their country is making us to be the bad guy. And I just think if we froze them out economically, we could overthrow them from the people. What do you think?
So, taking the Venezuela case for a moment, Venezuela is far more connected to the world economy than North Korea is. So
Right.
You're right about darkness versus light. When you compare satellite pictures of South Korea and North Korea, it's light in the south and dark in the north and at nighttime. And that metaphor is absolutely true. Now, when it comes to economic sanctions, they can absolutely be done, and they have been done. The question is, how effective will they be to focus the efforts on getting them to actually revolt against the Kim Jong-un regime? That is, of course, another matter. And it's a lot more difficult in a country like North Korea to make something like that happen. When it does happen, it's going to be basically like a flash grenade. It's going to be a huge surprise to everybody out there that it has happened. They'll be predicting all kinds of things, but no one can predict the precise moment when something like that would occur. And then the question, of course, is how likely would a revolution from within be? At this point in time, it's probably not very likely, just because the people are so brainwashed. Mm-hmm. However, you give them a hard economic time to deal with, then all kinds of things could change, and it would be a very repressive regime, and that's the one thing that China wants to avoid. They want to avoid the absolute collapse of North Korea, because they're afraid that if North Korea collapses, South Korea would take over, and then they'd have American forces on their border.
Oh, didn't think about that. So 4 administrations have failed to try to keep North Korea from stopping and nuclearize their arsenal. How do you think President Trump is handling this crisis so far?
Well, I think he's actually doing a pretty good job here. And one of the things that he did tout during his campaign was that he cherishes the virtues of unpredictability. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when dealing with a country like North Korea. North Korea is going to test us. They have already tested us. They are going to try to do things. Some of them will be more successful than others. But the very fact that the president has sent the U.S. aircraft carrier strike group with the aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson, back into Korean waters, the fact that the vice president was there and is now in Japan, all of that plays into a broader narrative which showed what was going on in Afghanistan, with the mother of all bombs being deployed, which also had the strike on Syria. All of this comes together, and the North Koreans read that as a series of messages. They will ramp up their rhetoric like you played with their ambassador to the UN, but the fact of the matter is, the more you challenge them, the more seriously they'll take us.
I understand the big picture, and I like the big picture. I really do like the aircraft move there. I like all of that because, it does show that we are ready to not be a victim. I don't want to take the sucker punch, and that's the one thing I do like about Donald Trump. But I have a question for you. If you're in South Korea right now, I mean, what is the tension factor there? I mean, they are, that is truly our one of our biggest allies in that area. And what is it like there? Do they have a system that if they were attacked, they could actually last? Or to me, it looks like it wouldn't be a long fight. What do you think?
Well, I think they could last. It's a lot different than it was in 1950 when North Korea invaded South Korea. At that point in time, North Korea was a militarized state. South Korea was basically an agricultural backwater. Nowadays, you look at how well trained the South Korean military is. They are among the best in the world. when it comes to actual combat and ability to carry the fight to to somewhere else. They have the tactics, the doctrine, all of those things that that you need in place for something like that. The biggest problem that the South has is the fact that Seoul, its capital, is so close to the north. We're only talking less than 30 miles between the center of Seoul and the demilitarized zone, and that's well within range of North Korean artillery. So that is probably the biggest single thing that keeps South Koreans up at night. They're very good at kind of masking what's going on and carrying on with their daily lives and, working in an economy that's one of the most vibrant in the world. But the problem that they have is that close geographic proximity. And the only thing that you can do there is have preemptive strikes that go against the North Korean artillery emplacements. And those would be very difficult to mount. And, of course, that in and of itself would be an act of war. But that's the basic situation in South Korea.
And there's such disarray. I mean, the first female president has been kicked out of office, probably going to face charges. And then, the interim president of South Korea was the one who was showing Vice President Mike Pence around. How do you think Vice President Pence is doing? I mean, is he sending the strong message? And, we should mention, too, that his father was a decorated Army veteran of the Korean War.
That's right. Yes, his father was a decorated Army veteran, a recipient of the Bronze Star, and it was very important, I think, for the vice president personally to get some familiarity with what his father's units were actually up to during the Korean War. That was a tough slog, and the fact that we allowed certain things to happen was also a lesson in history there, such as letting the Chinese in and having to fight them during that war. But I think the vice president is doing a very good job. He's touting a very strong message, and it's the message that really needs to be heard both among our allies in South Korea and Japan, as well as in Pyongyang in North Korea.
Well, Cedric, I've got my eye on that Hyundai Genesis, and if South Korea loses, that warranty is going to be virtually useless. So I want to thank you. I'm going to go price them after the show. So thank you very much.
You bet, Sean. It's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Cedric Leighton. Appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us on our Turnkey.Pro answer line.